Hi, and welcome to Two Tired Teachers.
Today we're going to talk to you about our top 5 favorite trips.
And we may be overlapping, and so if not, there may be more than 5 if we have different ones. I think both of us would say our favorite trip
is the one we're on.
is the one we're on. I mean, that's, you can't, when you're out there, you're not trying to say, well, you know what, this isn't as good as that, or this campground doesn't compare to that one, or whatever. No. Be invested and involved and love where you are while you're there, because you may get back, you may not.
Yeah.
And so, MiLena.
I think this is going to sound strange because it isn't the best trip we've taken. But because we didn't have any time much to plan, I think the plan to Bloomington, Illinois was... Bloomington, Indiana was one of my favorites. We wanted to go and see as many places as we could where Karen Kingsbury's...
Baxter series.
Yeah.
That was fun. Yeah, we were both actually still teaching at that point. That's when we had the fifth wheel, and it was
just fun.
It was summer, and it's like, by golly, we've got an RV, we should go somewhere. And we did. And that was a lot of fun, just going out and taking kind of a, not exactly spur of the moment, but pretty close. There are several that I could put as my very top one. But I am going to put the West Coast as my top just because it's one that I had envisioned from at least my 20s. That visiting the sequoia, we had seen them when I was a little kid. I don't remember Yosemite, but then the redwoods. That to me just exemplified what an RV camping trip should be. That just sounded so magical, being able to go out and be among these massive trees. Yes. And so the trip did not disappoint. Matter of fact, it exceeded my expectations. And so that to me was truly an amazing, awesome, loved it.
My second one would have to be the Mighty Five in Utah, because that one was the first trip we had taken where we were dispersed and didn't know exactly where we were going to camp. Or
she didn't. I had gone online and looked at a lot of places, but yeah, it was the first one where we were just dispersed camping everywhere.
Yes.
And so we weren't 100% sure.
Everywhere except Grand Canyon.
Yeah, Grand Canyon.
Well, we didn't have hookups or anything,
but we made a reservation at the North Rim. But yeah, I'll agree with that one as a second, because it was one that we really hadn't.
And it's the one that let us know we can go places and not have to have
reservations.
Or have to have... we had some solar, and we didn't have to have any hookups.
Yeah, that was one. We took it in the spring of 21, and we decided on it in like October or November, maybe even in spring, maybe even January or February. But I'd watched a video of Long Long Honeymoon, and they mentioned Utah Mighty Five, so I called MiLena and I said, hey, what do you think about maybe going to Utah Mighty Five this spring? And she said, okay, what is that?
Yeah, I had no idea.
I didn't either until I'd watched their video and saw there are 5 national parks right there in the southern part of Utah. And so I think that one was so much fun because we had no expectations.
Yes.
And we were just, our jaws were dropping every turn.
Yes.
It was so much fun. It was, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the second one for both of us. Then I'll do my third. This is hard. We've been on some amazing, absolutely stunning, amazing, wonderful trips. I'm going to go in and say I've got a tie.
I do too.
Yellowstone. I'm going to say Yellowstone just because it's one of those places that it's, I think the way we did it is why I'm putting it there.
Yes.
We had talked to, I don't know how many people, and most people, you know, if you're not retired, you have a time crunch
Yes.
of when you can do this, and so they're there for 3 or 4 days. We were there for 2.5 weeks, and then the other thing was we paid for a National Forest campground on the east side at the
Yes.
3 Mile campground, but then the rest of them we had free
Yes.
dispersed camping, and I enjoyed it because we were able to take our time, and that was why
Yes.
and it was so unlike anything else we'd ever seen. There's just so much activity, geothermal activity, etc., that it was pretty fascinating. Your third.
Yeah, and now I've got 3 tied. I think I'd have to choose the first trip to South Dakota in the RV, because
Yeah.
I'd only been to South Dakota once before, and we were running the whole time. We had flown, and we were there for 3 days, and we
Tried to see everything.
and yeah,
So being able to go back with an RV just enhanced that experience
Yes.
so much.
and we stayed in Custer State Park.
And drove the scenic loops. Every one of them I
Yes.
think we drove twice.
Yes, and one of them we may have driven more.
And then we went to Devil's Tower on
Yes.
that trip as well.
Yes.
Yeah, it was.
It was a grand trip, and I was just amazed that we had time to drive the scenic loops and look for the wildlife, and with the donkeys.
Yeah, we didn't know anything about the donkeys until that was awesome. So
It was an incredible trip.
okay, so that was each of us with our top 3. Now you do the number 4.
Number 4, this was, I didn't feel well on this trip, but I think it was one of the best, and that was camping at the beach, on the beach at North Padre Island on the National Seashore.
Yeah, that was actually a fairly short trip.
But it was,
That was our very first trip boondocking.
yes.
And our solar didn't work. It wasn't the solar we have now. It was our first small little,
Yes.
but we camped on the beach.
Yes, and I was so amazed by that, and every night we were lulled to sleep by the sound of the waves.
And getting up and seeing the seagulls diving for fish, and it was just pretty
It was an
awesome.
incredible trip.
Okay, I've got several.
Me too.
We may have to make this a top 10 just because. I'm going to say the first trip on the Natchez Trace and going over to Smoky Mountains. Just because that was our second trip
Yes.
boondocking, and I had just retired. My goal when I retired in December of 18. So to me, it was extremely important that we take a long trip the spring of 19. That to me just was like, I've retired so we can do this.
Let's
if we
do
don't
it.
start it now, we won't do it. And so we need to travel. And so that trip, like I said, that was our second trip actually, dry camping / boondocking, and the Natchez Trace was really the perfect place to do that because there are 3 established campgrounds that are free, and it was just went out and saw all of these historic sites, and then we went to the Smoky Mountains and stayed in Cades Cove. At that point, there was still first come on two roads there. I don't remember, but anyway, two loops there. And so we didn't have to have reservations there. It was the first time we stayed in a Walmart. We've gotten much better at that. But we'd called, made sure that we could. And so we had a lot of firsts.
Yes.
And our eyes were opening to the possibilities. And I was retired. I was, my first semester being retired. So it was just all exciting.
I think my next one would have to be Yellowstone. I've told Sharon this 1,000,000 times. Yellowstone's the first trip we went on where I felt like I was really on the trip and could do the things. I walked more in Yellowstone than I had any other trip by far. My knees hurt, but I walked anyway. It was wonderful just to be able to go out, walk on the boardwalk, see the things up close, not just pictures that Sharon had taken.
I would say my fifth one is probably, I'm going to say the Great Lakes. Just because they're the Great Lakes. And that was something, I can remember, I believe it was 5th grade geography. When we had to memorize the 5 Great Lakes. And just trying to imagine how big those things were. Well, it's been a long time since I was in 5th grade. And so that had been, on a bucket list to go, and we've seen 3 of them. And they did not disappoint. They were just beautiful. And once again, we were able to camp in National Forest campgrounds literally on the Great. Our campsite didn't back up to the lake, but the campground did. Yes. And so we were able to go, and actually on Lake Michigan, Lake Superior, in bays that feed into Lake Michigan and Lake Superior, I was able to get my kayak out. So it was, once again, one of those things that it had been something I dreamed of for years, and getting to go and do that just, wow.
The next one mine is going to seem strange because it's a Texas State Park, but it is the first time we camped at Lake Mineral Wells. Folks, that lake...
That wasn't the state park I thought you were going for.
You thought I was going for camp?
Yeah.
I was tired. Lake Mineral Wells, that lake is so wonderful for swimming. It has an actual beach, which a whole bunch of state parks do not have. The water starts out really shallow, but it gets deep.
But it has a rock bottom, and so that's really nice.
Yeah.
You're not in muck and stuff.
Yeah, you could or could not wear swim shoes.
And I'll just go in and say, I was telling someone this morning, they were saying, some friends of ours that both are still working, that they were getting away for a couple of days, whenever. And let me just say that I've been telling you these amazing, awesome getaways. But when I was working, exactly what I told them was, that getting away for a couple of nights, those are awesome trips.
Yes.
If you're still, working where you're having to be in person a lot, if you get a chance to take just a 1 or 2 night trip, do that, because it can really help kind of recharge, rejuvenate, and get you ready to go back in. But having said all of that, while we've each listed our top 5,
we could have been happy with...
and we could do, Texas state parks, we have over 90, so... trying to choose 1 or 2 or 5 of those would be difficult.
Yeah,
but
and several of those we visited in
multiple times.
And Tour Texas.
Yes.
And we'd not been to them, and they were great parks.
Yeah, and I will say I did enjoy that tour of Texas. We had taken a lot of really long trips. Folks, the tour of Texas, if you're not from Texas, we live in almost the geographic center of Texas. And if we go to the Panhandle, we're going to drive over 450 miles and still be in Texas. If we go toward El Paso, we're going to drive over 400 miles and still be in Texas. If we head toward Texarkana, guess what? Head toward Houston, maybe not quite that far, but if we go on
Houston's closer.
If we go on down past Corpus, and on down toward Laredo,
yes,
we're going to drive. So, point being, Tour of Texas is not like it just this, it's really big. And I enjoyed that because we'd been on those that were really far away, and so that was fun. But, like we said, the trip we're on, we love it. And so, if you're interested in any of those places, we have playlists about each of the things that we've mentioned, I think.
Yes.
But if you're interested in any of those, go back, check out those playlists, and maybe you can get some ideas of what you would enjoy doing while you're there. But those are places that we've been that have just, we're so blessed to be able to have gone.
Yes.
So we hope you've enjoyed our brief look back on some of our favorite travels. Thanks for watching Two Tired Teachers.